So I left the church, made lots of money. I knew enough from my childhood that I had to go to confession. And then he said these very strange words. He says, I think you have a vocation to be a priest. And I looked at him and said, what? Do you not understand English? Did you not hear the confession?
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see his hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention. Welcome. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. So there we were sitting around lunch. This was in the first week of our 2-week stay in Medjugorje. And Elizabeth and I got up and thought, why don't we just kind of go around the room? Who are you? How did you get here? What was the calling? What happened? Why are you here?
So I was in Washington, D.C. with my youngest daughter at a March for Life about 15, 16 years ago.
This is Jerry, spelled with a G, G-E-R-R-I. She and her daughter were in D.C. in a church.
And into our little alcove comes this gentleman that wasn't with our group. And then he specifically came and sat down beside me. And he said, I need to give you a message. He started talking about Medjugorje. And I mean, he seemed like he was kind of Looney Tunes, and I just thought I'm going to be really nice and just tolerate this gentleman and let him talk. And he talked about the miracle of the sun. He talked about how I needed to go there. And then he just, as quickly and easily as he came into our little alcove, he left. And I just vanished into the crowd and I never saw him again.
And then much more recently, she's one of those who had her ancestry done. They look at your blood, your DNA and all that. And she found out that she was connected some way with a gentleman who is highlighted in episode 110.
He forwarded me your podcast and said, you need to listen to this. So I opened up your podcast, and instead of listening to his episode that he sent me, I just started from the very beginning. And as I'm driving across the country and anywhere, I'm just listening to Trapper Jack and his people tell me all these amazing stories about how God has been present in their lives. So I get to his episode, and I didn't realize it was his episode, but he was actually on there. So that kind of surprised me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's Danny Sheridan.
Firefighting buddy out of New York, right?
That's right.
Danny keeps popping up on these episodes. I don't know. The guy, he's just looking for attention.
I know, right? As I'm listening to your podcast, you start talking about Medjugorje. And as with many people who listen to your podcast, my husband and I often listen to it at night. I said, Mark, I've always wanted to go there. I said, ever since that weird meeting with the guy, he said, well, why don't you just go? So I sent an email, got a call from Aaron from the pilgrimage group. He said there was one spot left. There you have it. I ended up at Medjugorje.
And of course, when you're in Medjugorje, one of the things to do is to climb Apparition Hill and Cross Mountain, which is Apparition Hill times 3 or 5 or whatever the number happens to be.
So it was a strenuous climb, I have to say. But we made it to the top, and
rocks,
that was great.
Boulders, jagged edges.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I was glad we stopped every so often to pray because I needed a break. But we got up there, our nice group picture, and there we are all in one piece. And then we start coming down the mountain. My foot got caught between two rocks, and maybe a 3-foot drop down to the next sort of level. And I know I'm going down and I can't stop myself, but my foot's caught in the rock. So here I go. And there's a huge boulder, 3 or 4 feet tall, with a large protrusion coming out of it. And that protrusion hit my chest. And I just slumped into it.
Did you hit your sternum?
Yes, I hit my sternum. The people around me, I could hear them sort of gasp. From what they tell me, the sound was horrible. The people who heard it, the people who saw it, they're the only people who can really appreciate how bad it was. Those people who were there were like, oh, yes. For a split second, the thought went through my head that I'm dying on this mountain. This is how I'm dying. But the person in the very front who was right beside me when this happened to be a doctor. And she was like an angel. She held my face in her hands. She was so gentle and she was speaking to me. She was kissing my hands, telling me that if the pain got really bad, I need to have my chest x-rayed, but I was going to be okay. She was right there. She was right there. It was like Mary put her there on purpose. God put her there on purpose. She was right there beside me. And one of our group, lady from our group, asked if she could pray over me, and absolutely pray over me. So I got down the mountain with a few times I just screamed out in pain because whatever way I was holding on to a tree or a rock or whatever way I turned my body, the pain just shot through my chest. And got down the mountain, and Julie took me in her car to the clinic that's there. So anyway, the doctor saw me and she put a little gel on my chest. She said, if it gets worse, we need an x-ray. She said, I can't tell without an x-ray what's going on, but we don't have any way to x-ray you here. We would need to take you to, I think it was Mastar. That's a distance. So I left, and then I went back to the hotel.
A little reminder at this point. Where are we staying? Where are we all staying this week? We're staying with one of the visionaries, Maria, who every day sees Mary, who every day in the evening, in the midst of a rosary, Mary comes to her with a message, okay? We all had 2 experiences down in the chapel during these Maria apparitions, the before the accident and after the accident. Here's the before, right? And she was not well. She had pneumonia that week.
She did, I know. She sounded weak. And so we weren't sure if we were even going to be able to pray with her at all.
But, Jim Caviezel came in the night after we left. You hear about that one?
I did hear that he came.
The actor.
No.
Okay, so for those who don't know, he played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ and is now in the movie The Sound of Freedom, which is an amazing movie also, by the way.
Uh-huh. So we went, out of the blue. We were told a couple days prior to our climb that we were invited to pray with her. And I'm sitting there thinking, is this really happening? I mean, I believe that Our Lady's appearing every day. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I believe the story, believe this. But did that just really happen? Because it just didn't seem real,
I know what you're saying. You're in this chapel. We're all doing the rosary, and then suddenly it stops because Mary's there. The Blessed Mother has just, and Maria is there, and she's receiving the message, and Mary is blessing us and the articles we brought and all this kind of stuff. But we're just kind of there spectating, if you will. We're just spectators and trying to feel in the moment of this, but you're not necessarily feeling anything special.
Right.
And we're told, no, she's there right now.
Oh.
In the midst of this, you're wondering, is anything really happening here? Okay, pick it up from there.
We left, and it was lovely, and that was it. It was lovely. I'm going to have to just have faith that happened, because I felt nothing.
Now, after taking the tumble, we go to the second apparition.
We had a little time that afternoon where half a dozen of us were going to a beautiful winery. As I'm sitting out there, I notice my arm hurts now, and I'm holding it up with my other arm, and I'm thinking I probably need a sling. I can't turn it. It's sore. So all these other things are starting to emerge now. I see a cut on my arm. I actually ended up with cuts and bruises from head to toe on my left side, which I didn't immediately realize had happened. But as I'm sitting there, I'm meditating. And as I'm meditating, I have this interior message that says, you need to consider this a blessing, this fall. And I thought, Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to figure it out. How is it a blessing? Maybe if the rock wasn't there that I hit, I could have broken my neck. Maybe, I'm thinking of Jesus's passion on the way down, making my issues seem far minor. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a blessing. Our little group did go to the winery, and while we're there, we get a new message that says we've been invited to pray with Maria again. We get there just in time. The rosary has just started. We're praying. We're praying. Mary appears. There's silence, and then Maria turns around to share the message, and the message was that Our Lady wants you to know that she's sending healing to everyone in this room who has an injury. And I thought, well, that's so strange. That's the strangest message, but I'll take that. I'll take that. Because usually it's about praying, it's about, praying for peace. And I was a little surprised by that message. So I went upstairs after that. My wrist that I couldn't turn was now fine. I could move it, I could turn it. And I thought, oh my goodness, this does seem, it seems too good to be true, right? It seems so miraculous. My arm was fine. It was no longer sore. I no longer felt like I needed a sling, and that was fine. Went to bed that night and woke up the next morning expecting. I mean, you have a fall like that. You have a fall like that. You expect to be a bit stiff the next day. I woke up in bed and I opened my eyes and I said to my friend Laura that was with me, Laura, I feel strangely pain-free. And I hopped out of bed, got in the shower. I felt nothing. I felt no pain, except when I laughed or coughed, I could still feel it in my chest. So it wasn't
I guess you could put up with that. Yeah.
I could put up with that. I went back to exercise where I do resistance exercises, and I was able to pick up my 30-some pound grandchild. I mean, no pain. It was gone. Everything was gone.
Elizabeth and I were just so shocked at how quickly you bounced back, because you were talking about this hurts here and I can't move that, and it's just like, oh man, and we all were feeling so bad, and then all of a sudden the next day it's like, no, it's gone. It's like, whoa, and to your point is that usually the next day is when it gets you, or even 2 days after is when it really gets you.
2 days after, yes.
And nothing, just nothing.
No, nothing.
What's your takeaway in all this? What's the big takeaway?
The big takeaway. My personal takeaway was I was a doubting Thomas, and it was like, I had to be hit over the head. Mary is absolutely appearing there on the regular. Yes, Mary was there. Mary was there, whether I saw her or not. She gave the message, and I was definitely healed.
Thanks, Jerry. Very cool healing story there. Quick Patreon shout out, then more Touched by Heaven. Quick Patreon shout out to Samantha DeSanto. Thanks for joining the Patreon family to keep it all going here. You can do that here at this episode, or you can go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. And what you find is you're in a family of like-minded folks who understand the why of what we do, how God is speaking to every single one of us, you, me, the church, the world. A lot of times we miss the conversations. So these are reminders that the conversation is always going on, which connects us right into the Bible. These stories they're an extension of everything that happened then. As it was in the beginning, is now, is still going on, and as it always will be. So thank you for your support and supporting the why of what we do here at Touched by Heaven.
It gives me hope. You hear so much bad news in the world. It's nice to hear how God is still working today, and he's in so many people's lives. And there are so many good stories about, uplifting stories and how God is working in people's lives, and we just don't hear them.
Yeah. Thanks for your kind words, Jerry. All right, now let's get back to our next story, which is Becky. So let me just turn on my phone here, and away we'll go with why she came to Medjugorje.
Stop button.
With my parents, it was grace before meals and go to church on Sunday, but we had to go to Catholic school.
Through high school?
Through high school. And then I entered the convent. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 2 years. I was the wild child. I was there for 2 years.
Wait a minute. Wild children don't go to convent. How'd you end up in the convent?
I was wild in the convent.
Oh, I see. Troublemaking sister?
Yep.
Okay.
So I was always in trouble for something.
Why did you go?
Oh my gosh. I wanted to go from the time I was 7 years old. That's all there was to it. That's all I wanted.
So that lasted 2 years and you left because why?
Because they kept trying to form me, and it was just, I wasn't a bowl full of jelly, and I just couldn't do it. So then I spent 4 years wanting to go back. And then I figured God hated me, so I was going to hate him back. So that's when I got into all kinds of trouble. And that's when the devil takes over your mind. And I didn't remember anything. I mean, miraculous medals, nothing. I didn't remember anything. Saints,
all the teachings, saints, anything.
Gone.
It just went away.
Gone, yes. Okay. You know, I didn't pray, didn't go to church, didn't raise my kids in church. You know, I married a Catholic man, but... Okay, so... my son is like 17, gets into drugs very heavily. I mean, we're talking major drugs. And we had spent all of our money putting him in rehabs and doing everything we could possibly do to help him out. And about 9 years before that, I had read a newspaper article in the back of a Methodist church with an article written by Wayne Weibel when he was Lutheran, who was saying this is happening in a place called Medjugorje, and that he thought it was, you know, not truthful. It was not. He was not Catholic yet, so he didn't think it was the truth. And so I just had remained. That's just sort of like stayed in my brain for some reason. So that we did everything we could for my son. We had no more money left. We had nothing left. We'd already refinanced the house. I mean, I said, what are we going to do? And so my husband said, go to Medjugorje. So before I get ready, I looked it up online, and I found Anna Shaw. And so I contacted her and decided to go with her group because that's the only thing I knew. So I go to Medjugorje. So the first thing that happened is I'm in the airport, and there are 3 women there, and the women have Medjugorje backpacks. I said, oh, I'm going to Medjugorje too. So we were all talking. One had 9 kids, one had 7 kids, one had 10 kids. I looked down and I said, well, I had my tubes tied. They all put up their fingers like crosses, and they were going to pray for me because I was a lost soul. I was like, so what did I do that was wrong? I didn't know that having your tubes tied was birth control. I mean, it's like, I tell you, when the devil wipes it out, it's gone. So we go to Medjugorje, and they're all praying for me because they think I'm just a horrible person. So we're sitting around the table, and we're talking, so what brought you to Medjugorje? And I said, I'm here because of myself. I was like, oh, I'm not here because of myself. I'm here because of my son. And I find out from Anna that I'm there for myself. I'm not there for my son, okay? So 3 days later, I get up and I go down to the confessional, and I made my confession. I said, yeah, it's been the first time I've been here in 20 years. I said, you know, so he sort of helped me through the confession, and that was that. And so I left. And so I went back to the house. I go up to Blue Cross Mountain, and I'm praying at Blue Cross Mountain, and my rosary turned gold. I was like, oh my gosh. So I kept looking at it. Mary, do you hate me? Mary, do you hate me?
Why did you think that?
Because, I mean, how could she love me after everything I did? So I just kept checking it every day.
So this is a silver rosary that turned gold?
Links between turned to gold. And my daughter had purchased it for me, and Andrea goes, well, if I purchased it for you, it certainly was cheap. So... But everybody saw it. My husband saw it. I took a picture of it. I carried it for like 10 years, and then I lost it at school. Wow. So my rosary turned gold. I saw the spinning of the sun. I smelled roses every time I went into the church, and I really thought I was crazy. I really did. So 2 days later, I get up and I go down to the confessional, and it's like, okay. So I waited for like 4 hours. And I get up to the confessional, it's my turn, and he opens up the door, and I said, before you get started, are you normal? Are you normal? Are you human? He goes, what are you talking about? And I said, I've been in this line for 4 hours. You've been in this confessional for over 8. I want to know if you're human. And so he sprayed me with holy water, prayed over me. And so we went in and sat down, and he goes, and why are you here? I said, you tell me. I went for the first time in 20 years 2 days ago. You tell me why I'm here. He looked at me and said, and why is it you only have 2 children? was like, oh my gosh. Wow. Then he brought up 2 other sins that nobody on the face of this earth knew. Dug a pretend hole in the floor, put all my sins in there, covered it over, and they said, now I'll tell you my story. I said, okay. He said, I was in an accident and declared dead. I had a miraculous medal in my hand. It fell out. My hand shook. The nurses put it back in, fell out. My hand shook, put it back in. And finally, the nurses taped it to my hand. And he said, while I was dead, Mama Mary came to me and said, your life on this earth is not yet over. You are to go back and hear confessions. So the man could read my soul.
Wow.
Yep. And so...
And you didn't know why after just 2 days you were going back?
No, I didn't. I had no clue.
You just found yourself standing in line for 4 hours.
They were having a party at the house for all the birthdays. I'm a party person.
Yeah.
No, so here I am walking down the confessional.
So he tells you sins you didn't, that no one else knew. Okay.
Nope. Okay, so then what else happened? I mean, it just, everything happened.
How did you feel when you walked out of that confessional in terms of, okay...
I started to walk down the street, the skies opened up, and there was a flood of water from the sky, like a shower, like a really heavy-duty rain that just lasted like 5-10 minutes. I mean, the streets were soaked. I felt it was a baptism, but that's just my own thought.
Right.
So, and then this is something I don't ever tell anybody, and I don't want you to put it on the podcast. Okay. So I go up to Apparition Hill, and there were 2 of us. His last name was Shaw, too, and he wasn't related to her, to Anna. And we go up to the top of Blue Cross Mountain, and his rosary had turned gold. He saw the spinning of the sun. He smelled roses. So we just bonded. He was like 25. I'm like 50. Mm-hmm. So we just bonded together. And so we go up to the top of Apparition Hill, and it's like we come back down, and I looked at Craig, and I said, did you see what I saw? He said, I don't know. Did you see what I saw? I said, you first. He said, there was like a shadow in front of Mary that was taller. It was like a head taller than the statue. And so we saw it together. Nobody else saw it.
You saw the same shadow?
Yep.
What did you see?
It's just a shadow that was of Mary. I mean, it was like, you could tell that it was Mary. You could tell the definition, but I mean, it wasn't a real face or anything, just like a shadow. The shadow was in the front of the statue.
Okay, so...
It shouldn't have been in the front. It should have been behind.
So what did that say to you?
That said that was Mary present. So we both saw it. So then
wait, why wouldn't you want me to say that?
I don't know, because I've never told anybody.
Well, now you have.
Yeah, now I have.
Okay, I'm leaving it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful. No, that's beautiful.
I didn't even tell the people in the group. It was like neither one of us did, because they all kept saying, how come your rosary turned gold and mine didn't? Mm-hmm. You know, you don't even pray. And I said, well, I think Mary needed to slap me over the side of the head. Wake up, girl. So
but let's pause for just a second here, because there was that. I don't even want to talk about this, because that's really personal, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Why? So you're not even sure Mary should like you.
Right.
And the fact that she's still standing there loving you.
Right. So I did go out and buy 400 miraculous medals. And I
to give them away? You give them away?
No, I stuck them in every teacher's desk. And every time one of the kids came to the office, I stuck one in his backpack.
And you were hiding miraculous medals public school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I also went to the where they have their meetings for the city.
Yeah.
Okay, and I put them in the walls around.
Well, you know, I'm just hearing more and more about St. Benedict, like lived in the 500s or so, an exorcist, and people are putting Benedict medals all around public places because they've turned so evil, and sometimes things turn around. It's amazing.
Well, this man named Green in our town was trying to get the crucifix taken down, and he was against God, and all of a sudden he moved. After we prayed and put the medals in, and
all of a sudden he was gone.
He was gone. It's okay.
I mean, you're still here. Are you all back yet?
Well, when I went back home then, I started going to church every single day. Okay. Adoration and church. Mm-hmm. So I'm in adoration, and I'm supposed to go back. And I go, okay, Lord, why am I supposed to go back? I'm supposed to go back this time for my son. I go, okay.
Back to Medjugorje.
Back to Medjugorje. I said, okay, God, look, I have nothing else left. I have no money. So if I'm supposed to go back, You pay for it. And that year, the teachers got an increase in their salary, but that increase didn't go till the end of the year, and it covered it to the penny. So I come back over here, and things happened here at that time too. But then the next thing, I go back, and I get that I'm supposed to go back again. And I said, what for this time? You need to say thank you. I said, okay. So I came back, said thank you. I said, God, I can't pay for this one either. So the German exchange student I'd had paid, his parents paid for Andrew and I to go to Medjugorje, Assisi, and Germany. They bought my ticket.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah,
And you've been here, how many times?
about 12.
About 12. You're trying to remember exactly. Yeah, it's about 12.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, I ended up bringing my friend here, one friend, two friends, and I have a friend, Stephanie, that I travel a lot with. And Stephanie just didn't believe it. I said, I went to England with you to see your family. You're coming to Medjugorje with me. So we get here, and she sees the spinning of the sun, and that was it. That's it. She's a believer.
Thanks, Becky. 12 times, and every time for a different reason. You might have noticed there in the confessional, something kind of that happens. You hear all these confessional stories, things that go on in there, and we certainly have had a number of those stories here on Touched by Heaven. But that also happens in our next story, which I actually found on the Fruits of Medjugorje website. This involves Dan. Surprising callings of why Dan, of all people, would go to Medjugorje.
Yeah, I didn't believe in it. When I was young, when I was just about 10 or 11, I was abused by a priest, and I made a conscious decision, I will never go back to church. And so I left the church for 20-something years and decided I would be rich. So I pursued banking and money, and after college I moved into Manhattan, and I worked on Wall Street, made lots of money. And then I was renting a house in Amalfi, Italy, a big villa with friends to just have fun for the summer. One of my New York friends said she was going to this place, Medjugorje, and she wanted to know if I wanted to come because she didn't feel comfortable. The war had just ended. And I said, well, it's just across from Italy. It has to be the same as Italy, right? There'll be good food and good wine, and it would be wonderful. So I went to Medjugorje in 1998. And when I got to Medjugorje, it was a very tiring trip. And I looked around. It was mostly old ladies praying the rosary. And I said, I don't belong here. So I said, I'm tired. I'm going to go to sleep. And in the morning, I will find a car out of here. So I went to bed, and I woke up in the morning with a tremendous feeling of goodness. And I can't explain it to people because you have to feel it to know what I'm talking about. But to say it's peace is not enough. I felt like everything was right with me and the world, with me, with God. So it was a gift. It was a miraculous gift. When I felt this good, I said, if it feels like this to be in Medjugorje, I'm going to stay the whole week. I knew enough from my childhood that I had to go to confession before I could, participate in the Mass fully. And so I went to the church to find a priest. And I knew, it was a 20-year confession, so it would have to be, as I say, a very merciful priest. So I looked for somebody in my mind that would look like he would not judge me. And outside, there was a priest who was talking with a bunch of ladies, telling jokes. They were all laughing at him. He was smoking a cigarette. He was tan and handsome. I said, this is the priest. This is a Hollywood priest. I will go to him. So I went. I said, can you hear my confession? He said, yes, of course. And he heard my whole 20-year confession of my living crazy life in New York. And at the end, he absolved me. And then he said these very strange words. He says, I think you have a vocation to be a priest. And I looked at him and said, what? Do you not understand English? Did you not hear the confession? And he said, all things are possible with God. And I said, okay, thank you. And I said, that's the last I thought of it. I went on my way. I spent the whole week participating in the whole experience. So the evening program with the rosary, mass, confessions, climbing Cross Mountain, Apparition Hill, Blue Cross, everything. And then I went home. And that's when life gets actually difficult, because then you have to actually put it into practice. It's much easier being here because everybody's doing this. But in New York, not everybody is doing this.
Now, 20 years later, Dan comes back with a group.
And we go out one day to see the statue in Tialina. And the tour guide says, wait right here. The pastor's coming out to say hello. And out walks Father Branimir. And I recognize him because this is the priest who heard my 20-year confession. But then he looks at me and goes, oh my, you became a priest. And I said, you remember me? He says, yes, I've been praying for you. Unbelievable that he would remember one person from 20 years ago when he hears 20 confessions every day. So he took me inside. We had coffee and cupcakes and biscuits, whatever he had. And we caught up, and it was so great because you see how God brings everything back together, ties a little bow, makes it nice and beautiful. Yeah, so to come back to Medjugorje now as a priest is a profound experience. One, because I personally know in my heart how much Our Lady loves the priests. I don't think every priest does, but I do. And so to come back to where she still is coming every day is so powerful. And now I get to exercise this ministry of grace, this ministry of mercy in hearing all these confessions. So it's a profoundly humbling to come from I had one foot in hell and another on a banana peel. So at any moment it would have been very bad. And now I'm in a place where I can reflect the glory of God and the mercy of God to the people of God, just like Our Lady does. Just profoundly, profoundly blessed.
Thank you. Now, Father Dan Rigo, and thank you, Becky, and also Jerry, and everybody that was with us in that first week, the Touched by Heaven Crowd Plus, if you will. And we just had such a wonderful, wonderful week and are staying in touch with each other. We were on our way to Mass. We were walking kind of from the hotel, and our friends Paul and Maura, and we were walking down the hill from Maria's down to go to St. James and go to Mass. And there was this very cool moment. Maura was kind of behind me and Beth, and I just stopped and I turned around and I said, and now Maura will say something very profound. And what Maura said was profound. I mean, I surprised her. She was kind of like, what? You know? And she said, using the old Vegas motto and doing a flip on it, she says, what happens in Medjugorje should not stay in Medjugorje. It should be spread around the world and spoken of around the world. And we all just stopped and went, that was profound. And so true. These kinds of stories are endless. Thank you, Maura. Appreciate it. All right. What is your story? Get a hold of me here at touchedbyheaven.net. Thank you for your support here at Touched by Heaven, or go to patreon.com and keeping this all going. Thank you for your ratings and reviews. And let's just do this again next week here at Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack, and don't be surprised if you too don't see me wandering into your church, because I love to do this and just sit next to people and start talking to them.
I mean, he seemed like he was kind of Looney Tunes, you know, and